Well, joining me to discuss his legacy, Professor Gerald Steinberg is the president of NGO Monitor and an emeritus professor of political studies at Bar-Ilan University here in Israel. Good to see you, Professor. Thank you very much for being with us. Well, you've written quite scathingly today, I noticed, on social media about Jimmy Carter. Surely he must be credited with securing the Camp David Accords, the first ever peace deal between Israel and an Arab country.
Let's start, first of all, with a little more background about Jimmy Carter and his relationship with the Jewish people, with Jewish communities, and with Israel. Carter never had the kind of warmth that Jews were used to seeing from Americans, particularly Democratic liberal presidents. President Truman recognized Israel in 1948, immediately after the Declaration of Independence, against the advice of his of all the people around him. And so we remember that. Jews remembered that. Lyndon Johnson, the American president, was very warm towards Israel. And even now, if we look at President Biden, he talks about himself as being a Zionist. We can argue about some of his policies, but he had a strong sense of the importance.
Was Carter a Zionist, do you think?
Sorry?
Was Carter a Zionist?
No, not at all. Carter was very clear that he was an engineer who looked at the Middle East very much through, I'd say, a very strong filter. He thought the Palestinians were the people who suffered. They were victims. He bought the Palestinian victimhood narrative all the time. He noticed that in his talk at when he signed the peace treaty, when the peace treaty was signed between Begin and Sadat, and we'll get back to that in a minute, Carter talks about longing for a comprehensive peace. It was Carter who longed for a comprehensive peace, meaning including the Palestinians. Basically, the concept, he talked about a Palestinian homeland. What he meant was a Palestinian state. He was the first American president to do that, and he thought of Arafat as a potential partner. And that's something that really broke all sorts of other red lines when there was very strong terrorism still going on, and Arafat was running the show, that the PLO terrorism. Well, so Carter did not have the warmth, and he did not have a strong sense of the details of Israeli politics or of the Middle East.
On Arafat, it has been written that he had a very close relationship with the former Palestinian leader, and he actually encouraged him to speak to the English language media in a much more moderate way than the way he spoke in Arabic.
But Carter did not take any steps against Palestinian terrorism. That's the important point. He kept wanting to bring Arafat in to the peace process. It was Begin and Sadat who started this peace process. Carter, when he came into office, first of all, the first Israeli prime minister met with Yitzhak Rabin. And Rabin, the Labour Party leader, the head of Mapai, after his meeting with Carter said, "This is a disaster." That was the quote that he said. He didn't believe that Carter would be so hostile and would push so hard for a Palestinian state without having any idea of what that Palestinian state run by Arafat and the PLO would be like.
Well, I wonder what he made of the... sorry to interrupt you. I wonder what he made of the Abraham Accords, given that that was kind of an extension of his work, which started with the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. Did he approve of that? Did he think that was a good step forward?
Again, the peace treaty was basically the work, or very much the work, of Sadat and Begin. It was Sadat who came at Begin's invitation in November of 1977 because they did not want to go to Carter's concept of a Geneva peace conference, which would include both Moscow, the Soviet Union at the time, and would include Assad, Hafez al-Assad, the father of the former head of Syria, and Arafat. Both Begin and Sadat wanted to reach a peace agreement to build on the momentum that had been established after the 73 war. And Carter was seen as a danger to that because Carter tried to force through what he called a comprehensive peace treaty. So, yes, Carter gets credit for being very much involved in facilitating the agreement. He was not the peace broker. He was not the negotiator. He was not the one who initiated the process. Would he have accepted, would he have endorsed the Abraham Accords? Probably not. Because he would have said, well, there's no Palestinians here. We have to have Palestinians if we're going to have peace. The Palestinians are suffering and they're victims. It was Carter who in many ways helped open the door to the Iranian, right now the Islamic Republic. It was in 1979 that the Shah was in the end of his term. There were massive demonstrations. And it was Carter who encouraged, among others, Ayatollah Khomeini to return to Tehran, where he took power. And now we have, many years later, the Iranian regime with its proxies and its nuclear program and everything else. So there was a lot of naivete, or I would say very much a combination of condescension and also lack of knowledge. But Carter never acknowledged that. He thought he could engineer everything in the region, and that was part of his downfall, I think.
All right. Professor Gerald Steinberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.